Dr. Rai, both Sau brothers, founder of the data safeguard, with whom I had been engaging for last so many years because of the capability they build and capability also. One is building here and selling to the globe, and I meet him when I go to Silicon Valley always, and the kind of effort he's putting there, but the kind of effort he's putting in terms of building those capabilities in small cities of India, that we say taking the entire ecosystem to the non-metro cities is also very important contributions they have been making. And all other dignitaries on the dais and all the people gathered here in this Saturday morning to discuss, deliberate on the time which has come for DPDP Act for implementation, right? And the implementation enforcement time is now getting closer and closer for us. Government is even thinking of accelerating that timeline for some sector of industry. And when we talk about privacy, and we spend almost 5 years of time to deliberate, discuss about what it means, this law, what it means, the rules. And now, last, I think, 6-7 months of time, a lot of momentum has got created to implement this act, getting this into different industry environment. And we know there are some set of industry, tech industry especially, digital first industry, they are much better prepared because most of the things they do are digital in nature, right? And the connect with the end consumer is also digitally. It's very easy for them to implement some of the expectations of the law. And when we talk about privacy, there are largely two types of the expectations that we talk about, right? So one is the procedural expectations of privacy. So when these procedural expectations are very important, because sometimes legitimacy of the collecting and processing information comes out of it. And the act way it has been defined and the rules they came, they define the procedural expectation and obligation for that matter. For example, consent is important, and that's very critical to make sure that your even act of collection processing itself is legitimate and legal in nature, right? So the consent is an important instrument, and our act is focusing significant part of the consent. But under the consent, there are a lot of things that has been talked in the act. It has to be clear and ambiguous, affirmative action driven. So procedural standards are being written for each of the transaction that basically do which involves personal information. So the consent, the way it has to be taken, the notice, the way notice needs to be given. So there are a lot significant part of this act is a procedural obligations basically, and your procedural liabilities also comes from it. In fact, procedural matters also defines whether your act of collection and processing is legal or not legal basically, right? It's also great opportunity for businesses basically. So until now there was a lot of this kind of a doubt in most of the organizations mind ki the way I'm collecting information, is it legitimate or legal? So it also gives you a kind of instrument and tool to make entire collection processing legal in nature basically. So that's a very important critical part of implementation of Privacy Act, right? But Privacy Act also has a outcome liabilities as well, right? If something that you do leads to breach of the personal rights of the individual, there's a significant liability, right? And we had been seeing this act talks about 50 crore plus significant liability, and there could be some situation where it could go also higher, right? So this any act across globe we look at, Privacy Act, always talked about these two categories basically, right? One is the procedural matters, which comes out of the content principle of Privacy Act. Another is the enforcement, that it looks like this has been impacted or imposed in such a way that if there is some kind of breach, there is a significant liability which has been established on the organization which are in business of collecting, processing information basically. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about India as a country which has a billion plus population, and we also heard now we are able to do this digitization planetary in nature, or to certain extent population scale kind of digitization we are talking about, right? So the things that we have been doing in digitization, largely we do three things basically. So we try to improve the experience of the consumer, and we try to, in a way, improve our own productivity and create new possibility, basically, right? So, experience, productivity, and possibility is something that digitization can be talked about. But when we start doing that, the kind of effort that we are putting together to make sure every product and services is a digital and data centric in nature, we are connecting the ecosystem a lot. So there are a lot of third party interfaces and vendors that do come into picture. We are relying on cloud a lot. We are increasingly using different architecture. Now event driven architecture is becoming very important because of AI, and entire this effort in terms of the things that happens or involves and get engaged in terms of processing the transaction which involves the data is very interdependent, complex, heterogeneous, and diverse in nature, basically, right? And if it is that, then management of these expectations of the privacy, the professional expected privacy, is not easy, right? And that's why you need to have those capability, and you have to make sure that, and privacy, that's one of the important part of privacy, is you have to do not only for one user, you have to do it for millions and billions of users and for billions and billions of transactions as well. So managing those expectations better, matching to the kind of volume, complexity, and diversity that we look at, you need capabilities, basically. It can't happen by just getting some people to work on it, basically, right? And here I had seen the way and effort that Data Safeguard team has put together to create this capability to help you manage the privacy much better, much effective, so that entire governance of managing this privacy, because we know in privacy there is one important part, right? You have to manage quantum and complexity and volume at which the transactions are going much better. So the coverage is the big canvas for you, and you have to manage it every time. But anything goes wrong, the specifics becomes very important. The diligence will ask all of those questions, basically. So that those effort, you can't do it for the billions and millions of transactions, basically. You need those capability. And I had seen this capability that Data Safeguard is building, and that's why a lot of technology companies, especially the companies which are in banking sector, insurance sector, transaction processing industry, are believing in really trusting the capability the Data Safeguard is building. And I believe such kind of capabilities are very important and critical to actually implementing, taking the privacy in the enterprise environment in this countries, the scale that we look at in Indian ecosystem. So we believe that next 1 year will be crucial for all of us, and this is a year for enforcement and implementations and learning all of those kind of experiences, sharing those basically, and that's why we believe this kind of interaction and this kind of deliberations are very important, because no matter how much you understand privacy, when it comes to the enterprise environment, it's not easy. Every enterprise is different. The way they do the transaction is different. Way they engage in kind of products and services and solution they have is different. So this requires not only technology capability and some skill and capability, but we also need these kind of deliberations. And I'm really thankful for inviting me for such a critical deliberations on DPDP Act and this implementation. And these nuances of implementation needs to be discussed very actively. Every sector now is trying to grappling it with to understand what it means to us and what it means for us to enforcement and implementation of this, basically. I believe that today's interactions will be very important critical interactions towards understanding those nuances and making better at understanding from the implementation information side. With this, I would like to really thank you, all of you, for getting me here in this interaction. Thank you.